Ambition, when spread too thin, often fractures under its own weight. Most who chase too many goals end up grasping none. At first glance, Expedition 33 may not appear particularly ambitious, but beneath its surface lies a quiet boldness. It juggles multiple story themes and gameplay ideas, any of which could have been the main focus in another game. If you've played across genres, ranging from classic JRPGs to action titles, you'll likely catch what casual players might overlook. Clair-Obscur Expedition 33 is not just a collection of nods or inspirations. It is a carefully constructed synthesis. Its systems and story are threaded with DNA from countless titles that came before it. I've never been someone who watches playthroughs or streams, but for the first time I found myself watching hours of people experiencing it, just to see how they'd react to the moments that hit me so hard. That's how much this game means to me. And as the creator of this video, I'm not just here to break it down. I want to be part of the community that forms around it. This is my way of contributing through a perspective shaped by years of wasting my time on countless games and the real love for what this title accomplished. This video contains major spoilers, primarily from Expedition 33, but also from 3 other series that form the foundation of this analysis. The 3 angles of what I'll call the triangle of perfection. Final Fantasy, especially 7, Nier Gestalt/Replicant, Nier Automata, and even though it doesn't have a plot, Dark Souls. Each of these games represent a design or thematic vector converging on what Expedition 33 attempts to become. If you fear spoilers, turn back now. Otherwise, let's start with the first angle: Final Fantasy. When I first finished Final Fantasy VII, a barrier broke in my life. The curse that had always stopped me from finishing any JRPG was lifted. I finally experienced the magic that was FF7, and this wasn't even in 1997. It was years later, which only proved how timeless it really was. After that, I dove headfirst into the genre. I finished all the classic Final Fantasies, got into Persona and older Shin Megami Tensei games, tried newer titles, obscure ones, anything I could find, but nothing else ever quite recaptured that magic. After all those years of searching, it wasn't another Japanese classic that brought that feeling back. It was a French turn-based RPG, one that didn't just recapture the magic, but made me hate everything I played throughout the years. There are clear similarities in the battle systems between these games. The way Pictus function recalls 7's materia and 9's equipment-based skills, while the structure of the combat system itself is unmistakably drawn from 10. But that's not what I'm here to focus on. What makes Expedition 33 stand out, what pushes it beyond mechanics, is its narrative. Specifically, how it handles the loss of a party member. It's a moment that immediately brought to my mind Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII. To be clear, killing a main party member isn't new for the genre. Final Fantasy II and IV had multiple side characters die. 5 took it further by killing a main character mid-game. 6 lets you permanently lose central characters depending on your actions. But in nearly every case, those deaths felt temporary, avoidable, or replaceable. They either came back, were functionally substituted by someone with complete same abilities, or could be prevented altogether. Aerith was different. There was no alternate path, no gameplay workaround, and more importantly, no substitute. Her loss had permanence, not just in the story, but in how you played from that point forward. She was gone and her role in your party was left empty. Here's a hot take. Final Fantasy VII doesn't have an amazing plot. It doesn't have especially deep characters either. What it has is perfect narrative structure. The way the story is delivered through interaction and mechanics of a video game is what makes Aerith's death so impactful. The moments I truly felt what I just said for the first time happens when you encounter the Midgar Zolom. That whole segment is a perfectly tuned moment of storytelling through gameplay and not just cutscene. You are sent into a field stalked by Midgar Zoloms, towering serpents far beyond your current strength. Unless you've grinded excessively, they crush you in seconds. So you do the only thing that makes sense. You run away. You ride a chocobo to slip past them without fighting. Not because they're unbeatable, but because it's not convenient to grind levels. The game doesn't force you to do that. You make that choice yourself. And then you see it. One of those Zalams impaled and left behind like a warning by Sephiroth. You haven't even faced him yet, but in that moment his power becomes real. Not through a cutscene, but through the experience you just had. You ran from these beasts, and now you're staring at the gap between what you can do and what he already did. His actual reveal back in Midgar left no impressions on me. But here, when I saw the corpse of that Midgar Zolam impaled just to make a point, I felt it. And from that moment onward, Sephiroth's presence, and more importantly, his control over the narrative, kept escalating. Later when Aerith dies, it's not just a tragic story beat. It feels like that same Sephiroth, the one who effortlessly killed that beast just to show you how small you are, is now turning that cruelty directly on you. Not just on Cloud, on you, the player. It's a loss you carry into the mechanics. The game doesn't switch to the usual battle theme. It leaves the tragic music playing, and when the fight begins you feel like you've already lost. Aerith isn't just gone from the story, she's gone from your strategy. No one else heals like she did, and that absence becomes mechanical. It's a reminder not just of what Sephiroth did, but of what you can't fix. You don't just feel Cloud breaking, you feel it yourself. Because Sephiroth isn't just hurting him, he's hurting you. And the brilliance of it is you haven't even fought him yet. That's what makes it believable. That's what gives this game's central theme, drive, its meaning. And the Expedition 33 understands that. Gustav's death hit me in a way Aerith's never could. Because by the time I played Final Fantasy VII, I was already spoiled. I still appreciated what it meant, and I felt sorrow, but the shock was gone. With Gustav, it wasn't. As if he's the modern-day Aerith for people who didn't experience their death firsthand. And here's another hot take. I think Gustav's death is even more effective than Aerith's. Aerith had value as a party member, but by the time she dies, you've likely already unlocked her best weapon and skills. She's fully formed, her arc both narratively and mechanically is essentially complete, but Gustav was still becoming something. There's a deliberate sense of untapped potential with him. I can't be the only one who assumed his death was a fake out. The lock skills, the weapons without traits, the sheer number of interactions with the party members, his journal, and the fact that he's clearly one of the game's most expensive actors. I mean, he's the freaking Daredevil. I found myself second-guessing it all throughout Act 2. During that scene with Renoir, I remember thinking, there's no way. You don't have the guts to actually do it. This is not FF7, this is surely Kingdom Hearts. He's going to rise and become a heartless or a nobody. But they did it. Even the music didn't cut to a battle theme. It flowed directly from the cutscene into the fight, just like the one after Aerith's death. They clearly did their homework pretty well. And then comes Verso. At first glance, it's easy to assume he's some kind of time-displaced Gustav. Maybe Renoir is a Gustav from a different timeline too. It's the kind of theory that makes sense when you're desperate for a reversal. But then you start comparing them, their gestures, their voices, their nose. You're looking for signs that Gustav might still be in there somewhere. And slowly, it sinks in as you go on. He's gone. Actually gone. And you feel Gustav's absence constantly, not just in cutscenes or dialogue, but in your formation screen. Your backup party is always short by one member. That gap doesn't go away, it stares back at you, like the system itself refuses to let you forget what you lost. And it lands not just because he was the protagonist, but because his death reshapes the entire narrative structure of the game. Gustav was the anchor of the party. He knew everyone. He had history with every party member. You understood his pain, his motivations. He was your lens into the world. And suddenly, he's replaced by someone you can't trust. Verso is a narrative risk. He's not just a new protagonist, he's Cloud in reverse, an unreliable narrator by design. He constantly lies to the party and to you. He feeds you false lore and obscures his real goals. He knows the characters you don't and has no relationship with the ones you've spent hours bonding with. The dynamic shifts completely, and that's what makes Gustav's death land harder than Erf's in my opinion. It doesn't just remove a character, it rewrites the entire foundation of the story. It makes the world feel unstable and unfamiliar. But to continue with Verso, I need to introduce the second and arguably more important angle: Nier. Have you ever noticed that the game over theme plays when the expedition sails toward the paintress? Or that Verso's theme is the only one among the painter characters without vocals? Or how he never speaks to Renoir not once throughout the main plot? There are so many subtle "have you ever noticed" moments that quietly shifts the game's narrative identity, steering it away from Final Fantasy and closer to something like Nier. Because in many ways, the second act kills the classic JRPG trope of "we are heroes, let's kill God." And that shift, all of it comes from Verso. He lies to you from the start, framing the tone of the game as if it's about to turn into Persona with cheerful bonding and wholesome downtime. One of the most striking parallels between Expedition 33 and Nier Automata is in how both games manipulate your sense of narrative certainty. In Automata, Adam and Eve emerge early as what seem like definitive antagonists, but as the story unfolds, their arc ends abruptly, and you're left drifting in a world that gradually reveals it was never about them in the first place. No one knew that a secret final act even existed, or that those two machines were ultimately just distractions. The real conflict lies somewhere else, scattered between machines, consciousness, and the absence of meaning. Automata doesn't end with the villain's defeat. It dissolves into something far more ambiguous. Expedition 33 pulls off a similar trick, but in reverse. This time, it's not the antagonists that's misleading you, it's the protagonist. You're led to believe you're stepping into a familiar JRPG setup. Your hero's on a mission to defeat God. But then Gustav dies early and the story pivots sharply into something else entirely. Just like Nier, the game builds toward a final confrontation between what's real and what's fake. Mael and Verso. Verso, like A2, is the fake one, someone burdened by a real man's memories, who knows too much but chooses silence. Mael, like 9S, slowly unravels under the weight of knowledge and growing power, becoming increasingly unstable by the time you reach the final part of the game. And then there are the two endings, each one leaning hard into this duality just like Nier Automata. You're asked to decide which philosophy feels more just, versus belief in a cruel reality or Mael's commitment to a beautiful lie. In most games, especially JRPGs, even when they flirt with moral ambiguity, they usually steer you toward a singular, correct answer, often depicting it as the righteous path. But here, much like Nier Automata, there is no right answer. In fact, the game doesn't even have a villain. The idea of gods and their creation is everywhere in the game. Some creations are immortal, while others are fragile and incomplete. Many of them yearn for simple goals just to find meaning in their existence. The Trumpet Nevron stands out to me as a perfect example of these incomplete creations. This cycle of life and death and the fact that the resurrected aren't truly the same as before is a theme that repeats throughout the game. All of this raises the same haunting questions. Are these creations truly real? Do their lives even matter? Does this small expedition mean anything? Is Gustav truly real? The impact hits hardest when you realize it's Verso who doubts their reality, letting Gustav die without interference, and even not resisting Renoir when he nearly kills him, leading to Mael stepping in to save him. Personally, my favorite part of the game is when Verso tries to stop Mael from erasing painted Alicia. You see him mourn for a while, but ultimately, he just can't care anymore. Not as much as he should anyway. This could have easily sparked a major rivalry between him and Mael later on, but instead he lets it all go. That resignation is what makes his character so complex and tragic. This is the beauty of the game. Everything makes you rethink your choices when it's time to pick an ending. Choosing Verso's path to destroy the canvas feels almost like deleting your save file in Nier Replicant and Automata, but narratively. You're basically erasing everything you've experienced so far. This connection is the biggest parallel between Nier and Expedition 33 in my opinion, and when combined with Final Fantasy VII's angle, it elevates the game even further. The endings themselves are somber, presenting a choice between bad and worse outcomes. This echoes Drakengard's descent into darker endings each time. Miles' ending with Verso playing the piano sent chills down my spine. There's a lot more that Expedition 33 borrows from Nier in terms of story and tone, but let's focus on Nier Replicant/Gestalt specifically. In that game, you embark on a quest to save humanity, but the irony is you're actually doing it. I'm not just pointing out the story similarities here, I want to highlight how the narrative flips completely on its head during the second playthrough, when you realize you've been killing humans all along. Expedition 33's second playthrough is just as magical as Replicant's, and it doesn't even need to hide parts of its story to achieve that feeling. In your first run, you notice many Persona-like interactions between Verso and other characters. At first, these feel like simple flavor text, but on the second playthrough, every single one lands differently, revealing layers of Verso's character. Whether it's debating if Lune is a dog or a cat person, or asking Mael who Gustav was to her, it's honestly masterfully done. With just these two angles, Final Fantasy VII and Nier, I'd call this game a true masterpiece even before considering its fantastic battle system. But there's one more angle left to cover: Dark Souls. When I think of Dark Souls 1, I think of perfect level design. Expedition 33 is by no means on that level in terms of polish, but it definitely takes cues from it. See, good level design doesn't need a mini-map. That intrusive little box in the corner of your screen isn't a feature. It's a symptom of a terrible level design. It tells the player, don't engage with the world, and the moment that happens, the environment loses meaning. Architecture becomes set dressing, exploration becomes irrelevant. You stop playing the game and start playing the interface. This, more than anything, is why I find Final Fantasy VII Remake Project's level design so deeply disappointing. Good level design trusts the player to find their way using the environment itself, either through lighting or clever architecture, not constant hand-holding. Dark Souls is far from the kind of story a movie or a book can give you. Stories are usually made up of plot, characters, settings, and themes. The heavy lifting is usually done by the characters or plot, or like some artsy-fartsy movies, by themes. But in Dark Souls, the entire weight of the story is carried by the setting. Through environmental storytelling, item descriptions, and even how the item looks, the world tells its own story. Expedition 33 takes a cue from that, and it makes the whole game world feel alive. You feel like previous expeditions happened. Expedition flags aren't just rest points. They're proof of lives lived, battles fought, routes carved. This is a world where people struggled, failed, or simply passed through. It feels lived in because it was. That applies to enemy design as well. Each foe comes with its own animations and behavior patterns. You can't just forget them, they demand your attention. And unlike so many action or JRPG titles, where enemies blur into a slurry of repeated archetypes, here they remain distinct. You remember them because you had to. And that's not to say the designs are visually lacking. Everything in this game is painted, and you can feel how different these painted enemies are compared to each other. The ones painted by Renoir are dark and disturbing, mirroring his vision of his family conveyed through the accents he created. In contrast, Clea paints Nevrons, which are creative and reflect her unique artistic expression. Dark Souls is a game about witnessing a world after its collapse. You don't trigger the story, you uncover it. Expedition 33 mirrors that structure to an extent, and in doing so, it feels more like a Souls-like than most games that chase the label. Not just because it has parries or an SS flask or bonfires. Ironically, where so many action-focused Souls-likes get the genre wrong, a non-action RPG nails it. Even if you get lost, if you look around carefully, you can usually figure out where to go. Most games never internalize how foundational level design really is, but Expedition 33 does, and that understanding quietly elevates everything around it. And there you have it. The triangle of perfection. Final Fantasy VII's mastery of narrative structure and storytelling through gameplay, Nier's philosophical depth and its meditations on identity and meaning, Dark Souls' environmental storytelling and world design. Expedition 33 doesn't just borrow from these, it understands them. It takes these pillars and builds something that feels bold, fresh, and genuinely innovative. With a gripping plotline, a striking visuals, a hauntingly beautiful soundtrack, and an expansive cast of deeply customizable characters without shoving monetization in your face, it's not just great, it's something rare. I thought Baldur's Gate 3 was the surprise of the century. Turns out we got two. There's more in this game than I could ever hope to cover. Ideas and choices that could be studied for years, and I'm sure others will do it far better than I ever could. But I wanted to put this out there, something personal, something that mattered to me. Just revisiting the game for this video, I found myself getting pulled back in completely. Those first moments in Lumiere, which somehow feel like Midgar reimagined through the grounded subtlety of Chrono Trigger's opening. You're not buried under exposition or forced through an artsy slideshow. The world simply exists, and you live in it. The storytelling doesn't talk at you, it surrounds you. Flying over the painted world map with Eskia chasing every last piece of the world you missed. Not for the sake of a checklist, but because you just want more. You want to drown in it. You want to disappear inside it. Just like Mael. Verso was right, but I won't let him delete this world. Delete? Yes, for added impact. Verso's ending should have deleted your save file. Maybe even the game itself. And the DLC? There's so much potential tapping into Gustav's arc. A third ending? Maybe even expanding on Miles' conclusion. Give it the full Drakengard twist. Even Lude, she floats. Oh, sorry. I lost myself again. That's what this game does to you. I'd honestly love to hear what this game made you feel. I'm fishing for comments if you don't understand what I mean.
Now you may think this getup is a baguette, but this is actually a baguette baguette.
This video didn't end up being 33 minutes long as I hoped. If you want a 33-minute one, maybe check out my last video about Kung Lao's design analysis. And hey, if you got something out of this, maybe consider leaving a like or subscribing. I never know how to end these, so